Manga.
After 2 years of dating and a year of marriage, I found out I was pregnant. Hey, listen. So, I went to the hospital today and there was a baby in my belly.
Really? Yes.
My husband and I had been talking about having kids since we got married, so he was very happy when I told him I was pregnant.
My husband and I worked for the same company, but I left when I got pregnant.
After 3 months of pregnancy, the morning sickness had subsided, and I was enjoying a relatively peaceful pregnancy. My belly gradually got bigger and bigger, and by 8 months, I had a huge belly. And shortly after that, my husband's behavior changed. Hey, honey, touch it. It's already moving. When I say this, my husband always looks disgusted and runs away. And to top it all off...
You're getting pretty fat, aren't you? Will you get back to normal after the baby is born? I don't want a fat wife.
I was shocked by my husband's words. Fat? I'm carrying our baby. How can you talk to me like that? Unlike me who has a baby in my belly, my husband who is a man certainly may not feel the same way when he's told we're having a baby. But even so, I was hurt by those awful words. And then when I was at 9 months, I got a call from a friend who told me the shocking truth. Nanako, how are you? How's the baby in your belly? Ako, hey, it's been a while. I'm fine, and I'm going to be in the last month of pregnancy next month, and my belly is getting bigger, so it's hard to move around. I see. Well, I didn't want to worry you too much, but I thought I'd better tell you. Tell me what? There's a rumor going around that Tano is having an affair with one of the receptionists at our office. And there are several witnesses. Some of them even saw him going into a hotel. What? No way! I'm sorry, I know you don't want to hear this because you're pregnant and all, so maybe I shouldn't have told you, but I thought it would be better for you to know. Oh no. Thanks for telling me. I was listening to my friend's words and remembering what my husband had said to me. I can't believe he would say those horrible words to me while cheating on me. So, what's she like? Do I know her? I think you know her. It's Sea Beauty. Remember she's got that flamboyant look and always wears revealing clothes? Oh, I certainly knew Sea Beauty and I'd never talked to her, but I had seen her before. Let's go somewhere after this. She was always flirting with male employees, and I'd heard stories about her two-timing. Okay, a lot of people who saw them said they saw Tano and Sea Beauty on a date, arm in arm. Some also said they saw them kissing in the car. I was so angry from the depths of my body. Speaking of my husband's car, it was the one I've been on. I'd been in that car so many times, even for medical checkups, and to think they were kissing in it made me sick. Someone saw them going into Sea Beauty's house, you know. Sea Beauty's house is near the office, and it's a pretty visible entrance, so... yeah. With so many witnesses, did they even have any intention of hiding it? I thought they were idiots, or on the contrary, they might have been trying to show off their happiness to everyone. Either way, I thought they were insane. Thanks for telling me.
No problem. Are you okay?
Yeah. To be honest, with my feelings in a mess and a baby on the way, I didn't know what to do. So I decided to question him for now. You! Is it true that you cheated on me?
I'm sorry, but you know your belly is getting bigger and bigger. I can't look at that belly and see you as a woman. I'm scared. To be honest, can you go back to the way you were?
I'm done. Your baby is growing inside my belly. Of course my belly would get bigger. And that doesn't mean you can cheat on me.
Because you're not the same person you used to be. And you always look like you're struggling and you're no fun to be with. If you want me to like you, you have to try harder too. Put yourself in the man's shoes. I can't help it if my feelings change.
My husband said so and gave me one excuse after another. That's enough. I'll get the divorce papers tomorrow and you can fill them out. And that's it with you.
Wait a minute. Why does that lead to divorce? What? You're overreacting.
Of course it would. Anyway, I don't want to see you, so I'm going back to my parents' house. Also, I'll be sure to tell our parents about this. When I went home and told my parents, they were rightfully furious. Especially my father was so angry, and
Break up right now.
it was as if he was going to my husband's place to punch him in the face. I wanted to as well, but the baby is on the way and I quit my job. It was a headache for me to think of divorce in this situation. The next day, my in-laws called me and said they wanted to talk. Oh, mother-in-law. I'm in debt to my parents-in-law, so I can't be indifferent to them. And I also agreed to discuss it with them. When I returned home, my in-laws and my husband were already there. And soon after, my father-in-law.
I'm so sorry for this foolishness. Please forgive me, as you can see.
That's right. My father-in-law, husband, and mother-in-law were on their knees. I'm sorry, but this is unforgivable. Above all, I can't feel any remorse from him at all. When I questioned him about the affair, he made it sound like I was in the wrong. When my father-in-law heard those words,
You stupid idiot.
and hit my husband as hard as he could, I saw it and thought nothing of it.
Ouch!
To me with a big belly, your son doesn't even feel bad about cheating. He said that the other woman and I have different looks, that my big belly was scary and even called me fat. All of those words to me, who's almost about to give birth. Hearing those words, I realized that I don't want to be with this man as a married couple. And I won't let him see our child, but I will make sure he pays alimony and child support every month. When I said that, my mother-in-law, who thought she could hold her grandchild, broke down in tears. My father-in-law also cried, saying he would do anything to make amends, and at least let him see his grandchildren. Seeing his parents break down in tears, my husband must have finally realized that he was wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I swear I'll never say anything bad again, so please, just give me one more chance. And you'll go back to the way you were if you have the baby, right? I can love you again then.
You're still talking like that. That's how you were born too, you stupid son. Idiot.
I'm sorry, Nanako. I had no idea my son was such a fool. He'll pay you the alimony. I'm really sorry.
I like my in-laws, so I felt bad, but I just couldn't bring myself to start over with my husband. I'm sorry. After the divorce with my husband was finalized, I was able to receive alimony and child support in full. And after that, I sent a copy of the divorce decree to C Beauty's workplace and received 3 million yen in alimony. What is this? She thought the raise for alimony would be around 500,000 at most and took it easy. But it being much higher than she expected, this is ridiculous! It's a ripoff! She went berserk. The lawyer did his best to recover everything, as this was a case of adultery while I was pregnant.
Leave it to me.
Naturally, C Beauty was fired by the company. Whatever. Although at the time of quitting, she said she was totally fine because she would find a job soon. But a friend told me she still makes a living working a part-time job. You want to order? By the way, my parents paid for everything, including lawyers. I was in the last month of pregnancy while struggling with the divorce, and the baby was born earlier than expected, so my parents didn't want to tie me down any more than I already was. So I really appreciate my parents, although my ex-husband's unfaithfulness, which I didn't expect, turned me into a single mother before the birth of my child. Thank you. With alimony from both sides and child support from my ex-husband, I think my future will be bright. Oh, he smiled. Look. Wow. My former in-laws would have loved to see their grandchild, and I would have been willing to show them. So there was a certain option to start over with my ex-husband. But the words he said to my face when I had the baby in my belly were unforgivable.
Go away. You're fat and gross.
And I knew that even if I start over with my ex-husband who cheated on me, it would never work out, and I would never forget the feelings I had at that moment. I heard a rumor that my ex-husband and in-laws are completely insulated because of this, but I don't think I can do anything about it, because it's the seed that he sowed. Ugh, I don't want to see you. My sister-in-law has twin boys who are 5 years old. They're very, very in the middle of being a child, and you'd swear they have an infinite source of energy. I, on the other hand, am 6 months pregnant, and I cannot play with them at all. One day, I was called up to my husband's parents' house, and while my mother-in-law was doing some chores, I had some tea with my sister-in-law. We ran out of tea, so my sister-in-law moved. "Hey, you just stay there. I'll go get us some more tea." She ran into the kitchen. Her kids were rough, but she was very kind and had always taken great care of me after I came to this house. I couldn't say the same about my mother-in-law. My morning sickness was really bad, so I really couldn't help out around the house, and she would often come around me to say, "You're skipping out on chores again? You don't work and you don't do chores. What the hell are you good for?" She loved to nag. Of course, my husband was furious about that and told her that she was no longer allowed into our house. She calmed down a little bit more, but as soon as my morning sickness started calming down, "You can move now, right? Come on, go buy me this." She started treating me like a slave. It was true though. I did feel better, so I wanted to make sure I could pull my own weight. However, that's when I was called to the house. My sister-in-law was going to be there too, so I said, sure. After a walk into the house for a while, I was actually enjoying myself talking to my grandma about pregnancy and things I could do to make things easier. It was really rare and nice. But then my sister-in-law's kids came running in, grinning, and "Get it!" kicked my stomach. What? Oh, what the hell? I was shocked and deflected their kick, so it hit my thigh, but my mother-in-law said, "Wow, you guys are so energetic. You got this. Get it!" She was smirking the whole time. Now reinvigorated by their audience, they started really kicking me. They kept kicking me in the back. "Get rid of the criminal!" Wait, hang on. Stop them. I don't know why she was just sitting there watching them the whole time. I tried to stop them, but if I got this kid off my back, then they would hit me from the front, so I just protected myself in a little ball. Then from above my head, whoa! I heard one of their voices before my sister-in-law slammed one of the kids into the table. The plates shattered and the other kid was thrown halfway across the room onto the sofa. I didn't understand what happened, but when I looked up, my sister-in-law stood there, menacingly. Her kids were aghast. "Hey, what are you?" My mother-in-law almost got out one last nag before my sister-in-law laid a huge bitch slap onto her. You could feel the shockwave emanate when her palm met her face. She didn't understand what had happened, but she just looked up at my sister-in-law with trembling lips. My sister-in-law ignored that noise and got on her knees, facing me. "I'm so sorry." Her face was buried in the ground. She dragged her kids out, now both bawling, and threw them into the yard. She made them sit in the dirt. They eked out an apology while crying. "I'm so sorry. You need to stop." My mother-in-law was also crying and trying to stop her, but to no avail. "You know that auntie has a baby in her belly, right? You know how many times I've told you to be careful about her belly, right?" She started lecturing them as they nodded. I was honestly kind of overwhelmed by her anger, but then I said, "Why did you do that?" I asked. "Grandma told us to. She said that there's a baby and to play pretend with the baby, to make the baby into a bad guy and play with it. She said to go kick the baby and that the baby would have fun." Honestly, I could hear my jaw hit the floor. I was so shocked. I do remember the kids having fun and playing up until that point. "Is there a baby in there?" It was just the usual. Honestly, getting kicked hurt, and if something happened to the child, I couldn't forgive them. And even though they were told to, they should know better than that. But I can also understand how they wouldn't think twice about what their own grandmother told them. Just like they think that mom and dad are always right, they probably never think that grandma is wrong either. "No, it's all a lie. They must have misunderstood me." She was saying something in the corner, but my sister-in-law ignored that too. "You really thought the baby would have fun? You guys like having older boys kicking and hitting you out of the blue? You gonna start being violent towards someone weaker than you? A baby, just because someone told you to? That's just human trash. Grandma is trash too. You guys are all trash, so you guys be her kid. You two aren't my kids anymore." They were bawling their eyes out. "Mommy, I'm so sorry. I won't do it again. Please, forgive us." "You're apologizing to the wrong person." Again, they apologized. She kept ignoring my mother-in-law, who felt that it was necessary to keep interrupting her. I think she must have been doing this for a whole hour, yelling at them. And then finally, she turned towards her crying mother-in-law. "Why did you do that to my kids? Why don't you answer me? You don't like her, so you don't like her kid either? If you want to be a bitch, you be a bitch alone. They may be able to put the didn't know better card, but you sure as hell can't. You made your own grandkids almost become murderers. Do you understand? Tanami and my brother would be parents who had their child murdered. You're seriously the lowest, scummiest human I've ever met. I have to protect my kids from people like you. I'm never having anything to do with you again. I can't forgive you. I actually want to fall off a building thinking about how I was born from you." She gathered her stuff and started getting ready to go home. My mother-in-law kept trying to stop her, but my sister-in-law was also crying and denied all advances to her. "Don't touch me!" Her kids were also shocked by their mother crying and started crying harder. My mother-in-law was crying, saying, "Let me at least fix your knee." She just kept screaming the same thing. After my husband came home, she brought her husband with her and both of them begged for forgiveness on their knees, face kissing the ground. He was mad too, but he couldn't exactly get mad at the twins that were basically manipulated by his own mother. He knew how much their parents would scold them, so he decided to just accept the apology. However, the mother-in-law was the problem. There was the problem of how she was before, and the fact that she used her grandkids' innocence made him mad beyond anything I'd ever seen. He went straight to her house and made a huge scene. I was told to not go to her house and to make sure the baby stays safe. My mother-in-law was chewed out by my father-in-law, my husband, and my sister-in-law, along with her husband and his parents. Oh, my parents too. Her husband threw her out of the house. Luckily, she was able to return back to her own parents' home, but the next day, she was begging for forgiveness at my sister-in-law's house. My brother-in-law ignored her and went to work. My sister-in-law also completely ignored her as well. I was told to be careful as well, and wouldn't you know it, she showed up at my door as well. Not saying a word, she was just on her knees. Pretty terrifying. Not a single word, just not there 1 second and there the next. I'm sure my neighbors were terrified. I was glad that our entrance had a small walkway. I don't know how long she was there, but she was there for at least 9 hours, I think. It was really gross and it's not good for the baby, so I talked to my husband and we decided to move when we got the chance. After we moved, my mother-in-law didn't know where we went, so she kept going to my sister-in-law's place to ask for forgiveness. However, of course she couldn't let it go that she tried to use her kids for murder. So at first, she threw salt at her to chase her off. She kept sitting in front of their house every day, so they called the police where she explained what was going on. She had a restraining order placed on her to avoid anything weird told by my sister-in-law's kids. News of her begging was spread far and wide across the neighborhood, and eventually, everyone knew the reason behind her begging. She's not even able to walk in the neighborhood anymore, but I think that's not enough punishment if you ask me.
I am Tanako, married to my husband for 3 years, but we have no children. My mother-in-law blamed me for that as if it was my fault, and I was undergoing fertility treatment. But the treatment was much harder than I thought it would be, and I was in a lot of pain physically and emotionally. Then I found out that my husband was cheating on me, which was a shock. But what surprised me even more was what happened after that. My husband, of all people, gleefully told me about the affair.
Hey, rejoice, we're having a baby.
Huh? What are you talking about?
I said we're having a baby.
I'm not pregnant. What kind of crazy nonsense are you talking about?
We're having our baby. You don't need fertility treatments anymore.
What the hell have you been saying? I don't understand. I'm not pregnant.
Yeah, it's not yours, it's Aiko's child.
I was stunned for a while by the words that came out of my husband's mouth one after another. But it became clear that he was cheating on me. And then he had a child with her, which he was so happy to tell me about it. I was suffering so much from the treatment, and you were cheating on me? I can't believe it. But my husband shows no signs of being sorry.
You're not the only one in pain. Don't make yourself look like you're the only one in pain.
It was your mother who told me to have treatment. She didn't even give me any support.
I'm sure my mother would love to see her grandchildren, wouldn't she? But you don't have to do it anymore, so be happy.
My husband cheated on me and had a baby with another woman. What am I supposed to be happy about?
What, you couldn't have kids, so I made them for you.
What the hell is wrong with you?
But I'm right, and now that I have a child, it means you were the one who was infertile, right?
My husband's words left me speechless. Sure, the fact that my husband was able to have a child means that I was the cause, but I never thought I would be informed of this through my husband's cheating.
So I'll bring Aiko next time. Treat her well, okay?
Are you kidding me? Why are you bringing her to my house?
There's a kid in her stomach, and Aiko lives in a small apartment.
Oh, so you're gonna make me live with the woman you cheated on with? You're out of your mind.
This is only right to have her give birth to a healthy baby. Aiko's gonna give birth for you.
What is my husband saying? Is he crazy? I seriously thought so. How would my mother-in-law feel about something like this?
Oh, there's nothing to worry about. What do you mean?
Great! Are you kidding me? The child of an adulterer, and she's overjoyed about it? I can't believe my mother-in-law would allow that, on top of cheating. I felt myself being thrust into despair. There's no way she's going to give her own baby to us in the first place. It's not an object.
Yeah, there's no problems there too. She said she doesn't want a child, but until she gives birth, she's going to have to live here freely. Let's give her a congratulatory gift after the baby is born to show appreciation.
Where would you find that kind of money?
It's in your bank book.
Hey, that's money I saved when I was single. Why should I give it to a stranger?
She's not a stranger. She's moving here soon. Besides, she's carrying my child. You could at least give her some of the money you've been saving.
It's no use talking. Okay, let's just break up. I'm sick of you. I'm sick of your parents.
What are you talking about? Then who's going to raise the child?
I don't know. Why don't you let that woman Akko raise them?
She doesn't want to be a parent. Why not? You get to raise the kid.
What's the joy of raising an adulterous child? Ugh. I didn't think I was going to get anywhere talking to this guy anymore, so I just packed up my stuff and left the house. And then I explained it to my parents, and they were furious.
That's no way for a human being to behave. Get a divorce and come home.
I was back at my parents' house and my mother-in-law called. Hey, what's wrong with you? My son is giving you a child and you're getting divorced? What are you thinking? You are so ungrateful. That's my line. You're in the wrong, no matter how you look at it. Your son is even letting the woman he had an affair with live in the house. Of course, she is carrying my son's precious child in her belly. You know, if you can't get her pregnant, you can at least take care of him. She was the same as my husband. Talking to my mother-in-law made my head hurt. Anyway, please do whatever you want with this person. Akko and your child. I'm already divorcing my husband and I will charge him alimony afterwards, so... Huh? You're the useless woman who can't even have children. Both my mother-in-law and my husband were gouging at my heart, and my spirit was on the verge of collapse. But then I found out something I never expected. A short time later...
Hey, come back home. Aiko's already living here, you know. We need someone to take care of her.
I told you I'm not going to. Besides, the divorce is already in the works.
Are you still talking like that? You're the one who got us into this mess because you're incapable of having children.
Don't justify your affair. And that Akko? Is she really pregnant with your child?
What are you talking about? Don't backbite me just because you can't have kids.
Okay, I'm not backbiting. I'm just telling you the truth.
What the hell have you been saying all this time?
I just found out that the other day the results of your previous tests, you have azoospermia, which means you can't have children.
What are you talking about? Me? How's that possible? She's pregnant, for Christ's sake.
I know you don't want to believe it, but there's a medical report. Why don't you go to the hospital and ask for more information?
That's nonsense. Then whose child is Aiko pregnant with?
Oh, Akko. She recently separated from her husband, but she's married to begin with, right? She was living in the apartment with her husband right before she moved into the apartment. Of course I have proof. I checked in with the investigators.
Aiko was a married woman?
Well, if it's not your child, isn't it her husband's? They were living in an old apartment and he had more money than him, so she probably decided to switch. She can date you while she has the baby and lets me raise it.
No!
I hung up the phone as he screamed. Then, as I had predicted, Akko was an ex-married woman, and she had one with her husband at the same time she was having an affair with my husband. My husband's azoospermia means that the child is definitely her husband's child, and it seems that Akko was kicked out of the house.
Get out!
And I naturally demanded alimony from my husband and Akko, who were having an affair this time. My husband's in-laws also treated me unfairly, so I sued them all together. But I had all the evidence I needed and easily won the case. The in-laws seemed to be in a state of despair after learning that their only son cannot have children.
You're all I have. We can build a happy family even if we don't have children, so let's start over again, as lovers.
And my husband sends me Romeo mails, but I ignored all of them. Deleted. I don't want anything to do with them ever again. And now I'm living at my home with my parents. Fortunately or unfortunately, I have my alimony in hand, and I'm going to find my new happiness this time.
At the end of the bubble economy, my company went bankrupt and I became unemployed. I was at a loss at the time because my wife found out she was pregnant. But I was working during the bubble economy, so my salary was high. My wife and I had a lot of money saved up since our hobbies didn't cost a lot of money. I personally had enough savings to get by without a job for about 10 years if I was modest, even with my wife and another person. But my wife's parents and brother didn't think it was a good idea and went crazy when I was going around to job security and other sources trying to get a new job. Divorce him, remarry someone better. He came to my house day after day. It was also a disaster that my brother-in-law had a house built on the same property with a promise to stay there until he got married, at the request of my parents-in-law. My wife and I complained, but he wouldn't listen to us.
Pimp scumbag. Write divorce papers and leave all your money behind. Or die insured.
She cursed at me. My pregnant wife was under a lot of stress, so I approached my parents. My parents, who were angry that they had to take me, the oldest son and heir to the family, responded immediately, although reluctant. But they must have found out about the move, because when I went job hunting and my wife got tired and went to bed, they broke in with a duplicate key. The entire in-laws banded together to restrain my wife. My wife, who had been punched in the stomach by the in-laws, was sent to the obstetrician's office. I got a call that it was almost certain to be a miscarriage, and I rushed to the hospital. But I didn't know what was going on. I was criticized for taking my eyes off my wife at a critical time when my wife was not feeling well. And I was so sorry that I even got down on my knees to my in-laws. But when my wife woke up and found out what had happened, I naturally wanted to kill them all. My wife felt the same. I was not going to let them get away with it, so I took my time to prepare. There was no way they were getting away without a scratch. I asked for an acquaintance to rehire me for a limited time at a major company near my parents-in-law's house, and I didn't tell them about the limited time part. When I entered the company housing there, I took most of the furniture and valuables from our house and sent them to my parents' house and said thank you to my in-laws for taking care of me. They gave me a 3-night hot spring trip, and I was ready to go. While the in-laws were away, I borrowed a large piece of heavy machinery from my former employer and cleared the site of my parents-in-law's house in about 2 days. All the furniture in my parents-in-law's house is under the rubble. My wife took steps to shut down the gas, water, and electricity while disconnecting everything with the skills she had acquired at her previous job. The companies were very angry since they agreed after the fact.
His brother-in-law is building a new house, so we cleared the land.
I told them. I was treated like a Masuo, even though I wasn't his son-in-law, and I still did my best. But it was not worth it, so I leaked the whole thing about my wife and everything else. When I told them about my wife, everyone who listened to me changed color. Everybody knew that my wife was pregnant, because we're neighbors, but my in-laws told people she had a miscarriage because of my constant abuse of her. Those who were told the truth by my wife instead. How could they do such a devilish thing?
They're insane.
They were furious.
What a horrible thing to do.
Some of them were crying and caring for my wife, and I said goodbye and thank you to them at the end. I then apologized to the mediator and reported that I would cut off all further contact with my wife's parents' family. I heard that my parents also sent a letter of severance to my in-laws in a sealed envelope. I heard that the in-laws were very upset when they got home, but the neighbors ignored them because of what they did to my wife. Rather, the terrible treatment of my wife by my in-laws spread quickly through the mouths of our neighbors. An acquaintance who lived in the same town went out of his way to tell me that the whole town knew about the bad behavior. And if they tried to come over to our company housing, the company doesn't actually have company housing. And on top of that, the bad behavior was exposed here as well. And they were so heartbroken that they said they were going away someplace far with their wife. There was no company housing. I had no idea where they were going, because their contracts had expired, and I had reported them to my father-in-law and brother-in-law's employers, so they both lost their jobs. They were very stubborn about it, but... Oh, lucky you're not being sued out of family courtesy. I heard they were cut off. He called my parents' house as a last resort, but my dad, who rarely loses his temper, I heard what you guys did to my son's wife. I'm so furious that I could beat you to death, so I'm gonna cut you off. He shouted and immediately hung up. My parents were in a state of first grandchild fever, and they told my parents that my wife was pregnant. They were thinking about what to give her as a baby gift. My parents were devastated by the miscarriage and the treatment they received from their relatives. My mother cried herself to sleep for a while. For the parents, it was not possible for the child to be born. But the child in her belly was already a grandchild and a family member to them. They lost that family due to the cruelty of their own relatives. It was natural for my father to feel the same way as me. After my wife and I came to my parents' house, my mother hugged her tightly. My wife, who had been holding back because she thought I might blame myself if she cried, was sobbing in my mother's arms. My wife didn't seem to consider her family as family anymore, and started treating my parents as if they were her own. I overheard that after my wife and I were gone, my in-laws lost their house and everything, bought an apartment with old furniture from a recycle store, and the three of them were living there. Just because my wife's story is so outrageous that it spread all over town. Every time my brother-in-law brings her girlfriend.
If you marry into this family and they don't like you, they'll kill your baby if you get pregnant. Because that's what they did to my own daughter's baby.
And the old ladies in the neighborhood will gossip about it and run. My brother-in-law has not only been single all his life, but he can't even get a girlfriend anymore. Urgh! No matter how mad he gets, we are not there for him. Because there is no excuse for what he did. Because of all this, it made it hard for them to live there, and I heard they moved somewhere again. But I found out through a relative that my mother-in-law had passed away. The relatives had heard about what they did to my wife, so they reported it to my wife. But they told her that she could decide for herself whether or not to attend the funeral. My wife has no intention of going. I heard when my mother-in-law passed away, my father-in-law looked like a shadow of his former self. His clothes were in tatters, and he seemed to barely make it through each day. My brother-in-law laments the fact that no matter where he goes, he can't be happy because of what he's done. He can't get a part-time job, he can't afford to eat, and he was arrested for stealing. For my wife, that's a memory she would like to forget. But she can't seem to do that, because if she does, she'll also forget the existence of the child in her belly. He was certainly alive. But I know that's a burden I'll have to carry with me for the rest of my life, because I couldn't protect her. I moved back home and took over my parents' business, which was an independent business. I left the technical side of the business in the hands of my father and the craftsman, and I took over the management of the business. My father's skills were top-notch, but his management was not so good. And when he and I split the business took off, and we took the opportunity to build a 2-family house, including an office. My wife seems to get along with my parents, and she relies on them. My parents were very fond of her as well. After that, we had our second child. My wife and I were happy, of course, but my parents were happier. When she was in the stable period, we had a big party with all the employees of the company, and we all prayed for my wife's birth. Thanks in part to that, my wife gave birth to a healthy baby boy. 2 years later, she gave birth to twin girls, and our family became lively all at once. When it came time to name the children, we thought we'd name one after our first child.
What should we do?
My mother, who happened to hear that.
That name belongs to a child in heaven. Wouldn't you feel bad?
My wife and I were convinced. You're right. And we still keep the name of our first child in our hearts. These children are now all grown up, and the older one will enter elementary school this year. All 3 of them, including the youngest, have grown up healthy without a single illness. I think it's thanks to our child who's still watching over us from heaven.
My name is Tanami. I'm out with my high school friend, full-time worker, and mother, Nanako. It has been about a year since we last met.
Hey, Nanako. Been a minute.
I've been so busy. Thanks for coming out. I have a lot I want to talk about, so I'm gonna keep you hostage for a while.
We went to a bar that I regularly went to and started drinking. So, what is it that you wanted to talk about?
Well...
Nanako lived in a house near the apartments I lived in with her husband and her 3-year-old son. There was a kindergarten nearby, and it was a great place to raise kids.
Ah, good morning, Nanako-san. You're working today too? Must be tough with both parents working.
And this was Dorumi. She lived 2 houses down. She was considered a sort of a boss character amongst the mothers, and everyone was always kissing her ass. The houses were all pretty open, so you could see the inside of the yard fairly easily, but Nanako would often see the moms at Dorumi's yard, with their kids playing ball or running around. When Nanako moved here, she went to say hello to Dorumi.
Is your child in daycare? We all make our kids go to kindergarten. I'm sure our kids won't be able to play much since we're going to be on different days.
Well, that was her first impression, so she wasn't very good with Dorumi. To make things worse, the water and electricity were extremely expensive after they moved. They were in the same city, so it shouldn't really change, but it was at least twice as expensive as before. One day...
My head hurts this morning. Can you send him off to daycare today?
Sure, you got plenty of PTO. Why don't you just take it off? Relax.
Maybe it was stress from the move, but she felt sick, so she took medicine and went to bed. After they left, Nanako was falling asleep when she heard sounds coming from outside. The kindergarten was in summer break, so maybe Dorumi had invited friends over or something. She didn't really think much of it. About an hour later, she woke up and felt much better. She was about to get out of bed when she heard a large bang on a window. What? What the hell was that? Nanako was afraid, so she slowly crept to the window to peek outside. She noticed that all of the neighborhood kids were in her yard. They had even put a small pool out. The hose was coming from the tap outside. Some kids were on the wooden deck outside, soaking the table and chairs, playing games and seeing who could spit their seats farther. The pool had a small ball, and there was a clear mark on the window of a ball hitting the window. It was most likely that ball. Dorumi and 4 other groups of moms were all there in their little camping chairs, talking and having fun. They even had a bunch of chargers plugged into the wall, and they were charging their phones.
I'm so glad we found a yard that we can use when we wanted. You're so incredible, Doremi-san! I didn't know unlimited applied to water, not just phone data. Oh, let's bring out the hot plate during lunch and have a nice little yakiniku. I don't want to bring charcoal and burn the yard. I was worried last year, but I'm sure she won't notice. She's always out at work and never comes home till it's dark. If she smells charcoal, we can just say that we had a barbecue in our yard.
She heard that conversation in her yard, and the kids started having water balloon fights. The yard was filling up with bits and pieces of water balloons. The water was running the whole time. The moms weren't scolding the kids at all. Well, they of course didn't try to stop the water either. That's why the water bill was so high. She was so furious. She backed away from the window and went upstairs before calling the cops.
There are people who are trespassing in my yard, so please come right away.
She took her phone and started recording from upstairs. The police showed up quickly. The mothers were all surprised by the siren and stood up. The kids were excited about the police car.
We received a call of trespassing at this residence. Do any of you live here?
Dorumi and the group were clearly shaken up. The police were extremely suspicious of their behavior, so they rang the doorbell. She opened the door to answer the police, and Dorumi jumped up in surprise.
What? Why are you here? I thought you went to work!
Are you the resident of this house?
Yes, here's my license and my address.
The police officer checked the license, and she showed her recordings.
These people had no right to enter my property. I think you can look it up, but they've been doing this for 3 years now. They've been using my power and water.
Doremi and her little group were all pale blue.
No, you said we could use the yard freely, right, guys?
Doremi turned to her little group of moms, but they were terrified to lie in front of a police officer, so they just fell silent.
I've never said such a thing. Did we have some kind of contract? Something that you can definitively show as proof that I gave you permission?
Doremi fell silent at how angry Nanako was. Doremi and friends were all loaded into a car and taken to the station. Afterwards, Nanako hired a lawyer and filed a formal report. In return for canceling the charges against them, she was asking for 3 years' worth of electricity and utility charges. They still didn't seem to understand the hot water they were in, so she sent them legal documents. 2 of the moms immediately came for settlement, but Doremi and her friend had completely lost touch with reality.
Come on, we're neighbors. Let's get along.
And they were insane. They brought some snacks and tried to call it a day.
Sure. Let's take it to court to make it clear how friendly we all are then.
Their husbands showed up shortly after, dragging their wives to apologize. Doremi was still too proud to look Nanako in the face and apologize. She was looking away the whole time while apologizing. As a result, Doremi and her best friend got a divorce. They both agreed that there was no way they could live with the crazy wives like them. Because of their past, the courts gave full custody to the fathers. The other 2 had their mother-in-laws move in with them to watch over their every move. They also paid Nanako back for all the water and utility bills over 3 years. I can't believe it! I remember your water bill being really high.
Yeah, I'm actually doing pretty good now after receiving extra money for damages. I'll buy today.
Yay! Thank you. Wait, do I need to sign a contract or something?
You're a friend, so no. You've listened to me vent for a while.
I'm glad everything worked out. There are good people in the neighborhood, but there are some people like Doremi who are insane too. It was definitely a vicarious learning experience.
I am a housewife and live with my husband and in-laws with our 5-year-old daughter. My husband is old-fashioned, perhaps because of his father's influence.
Where's the food? How dare you make us wait when we come home after working outside the home? You're just a woman who's supported by her husband. Don't tell me you're too lazy to do the housework.
My husband and father-in-law always do this just because the food isn't ready at exactly 7 p.m. My husband was kind before we got married, but then suddenly changed when we did, and then I became a housewife. And my mother-in-law and I live in constant fear of the 2 of them, who yell at us every day whenever something happens. My husband works for my father-in-law's company, so I only have time off when he goes on business trips. And to tell you, I was exhausted by my husband's constant arrogance.
Where are the chopsticks and tea? Yuki, you're a woman too. You're supposed to do the housework.
I'll do it. Just don't yell at Yuki.
She needs to learn how to do the housework from a young age, or she won't be a good woman.
But she's only 5. Don't push her.
Are you going against the man of the house? Stop getting so cocky.
At a sudden burst of anger, my husband throws the chopsticks at me. I picked the chopsticks in a hurry and headed to the kitchen to escape. I can't live like this anymore. But I can't worry my parents. As a woman living in a man's world, I can't even make a living as a housewife, taking my daughter and leaving home. I had to endure every day, even if it was hard. Then one day, I had to take my mother-in-law to the hospital. So I asked Yuki, my daughter, to stay at home because the examination would take some time. Yuki, sweetie, the snacks are on the desk. Be a good girl, okay? Okay, bye, Mom. And to my horror, this was a big mistake. When I came home, the living room was empty. The drinks, snacks, all of it were still there. But Yuki, I thought maybe the 3 of them had gone out somewhere, but The shoes were still in the entrance, and so I went out into the yard and found Yuki lying there. Yuki, what's wrong? Yuki was covered with lots of laundry and clotheslines.
Mom, sorry. The laundry.
I saw the bruises on Yuki's face where she had been hit by the clothesline. I rushed to help her and headed to the hospital. Fortunately, there was no bone or brain damage, only minor bruising. But when I asked Yuki about it, I found out a terrible truth. When Yuki realized it was starting to rain, she decided she needed to get the laundry in, so she told my husband.
You're a woman. Do that on your own. You're interrupting my day off.
He said. Yuki tried to do something on her own, but there was no way a 5-year-old could handle heavy clothes soaked in the rain. And that's when the clothesline came down and hit her in the face, and she got stuck underneath.
I'm sorry, Mom. I ruined the laundry.
We can wash the laundry again. I would rather not have you get hurt, Yuki. So even if Dad says something, you don't have to do it, okay? And then I hugged Yuki, who was crying and apologizing. When we got back home, my mother-in-law ran up to me, worried to see her granddaughter with a poultice on her face. But I still couldn't find my husband and father-in-law. When I went upstairs, my husband and father-in-law were both taking a nap in their bedrooms. What do you think you're doing? Yuki got hurt because of you.
Nonsense! Is that something worth telling me when I'm sleeping? You're the one who didn't teach her how to do the laundry. How dare you complain to your own husband? How many times have I told you that housework is a woman's job?
Duh, I'm done with this. And finally, I came in contact with my senses. I decided to get a divorce and gathered evidence of verbal abuse and violence, then consulted a lawyer and then my parents. And then one day, after all of the evidence had been gathered, I'm sorry, my back really hurts and I need you to take me to the hospital. My mother-in-law, who had been suffering from worsening back pain, asked me to take her in tears. I decided not to take Yuki with me because a cold was going around. Honey, you don't have to listen to your dad. If anything happens, call Mom's phone, okay? And then I left Yuki behind. Fortunately, the hospital was empty and she was able to get examined quickly. My mother-in-law was admitted directly to the hospital to rest. I arrived home and was putting my car in the garage when I received a call from home. Hello? Yuki? Did something happen?
Mom, Dad and Grandpa are crying because some stranger is mad at them.
Okay, honey. Thank you. Just wait a little bit longer. I wonder who the stranger is. I cautiously opened the door to the house and headed into the living room. When I looked inside, there they were. My husband and father-in-law sitting on their knees crying. What happened? Oh, President.
Welcome back. Sorry for coming in. How's your mother-in-law?
The man in front of my husband and father-in-law was the president of a large company that does business with my father-in-law's company. I remembered his face because I met him several times. My mother-in-law was overworked and should be hospitalized and rested. But more importantly, what's going on here?
Dad told me to make tea for the president, but when I brought the tea from the fridge, he told me to make it hot. I told him that Mom said not to touch hot things because it's dangerous. Then Dad got angry and tried to hit me. Then the president got angry and made Dad and Grandpa cry.
I told you many times not to let Yuki do anything dangerous. What if she gets burned?
You let your young daughter do this all the time? This is abuse. This is absolutely unacceptable.
After hearing me say that, the president glared at them as if he was some demon. My husband and father-in-law flinched at his glare.
But men work outside the home and it's perfectly natural for women to do the housework. It's not abuse, it's discipline. That's right. At home, men should just stand tall. Absolutely not.
The president's thick voice coming from his stomach silenced them once again.
Supporting each other in life, that's what marriage is about. That's what husband and wife are supposed to do. If you don't rest, of course you'll break down. Can't you even understand that? I heard your wife is in the hospital. Isn't that because you made her work too hard?
That's right. I told him the truth, not caring about my father-in-law who was glaring at me. My mother-in-law has been doing the housework without a break for the past 40 years since they got married. And even if she took the slightest break, my father-in-law and husband would verbally abuse her. Her body is in bad shape and her heart in shambles.
If you say women have to do housework without a break, then you were ready to work for 40 years without a break, aren't you? No, that's different. Were you forcing your wives to do what you can't do? I don't want to continue doing business with such a coward. Our contract expires at the end of this month. No! Our company won't last if that happens. I can't work with people I can't trust. If you two are willing to repent for what you've done and show some sincerity, then I'll consider it.
The two were in a panic at the talk of their contract suddenly getting terminated. If it were known that the contract was cut because of these family matters, the employees' trust would be ruined.
I'll do it. I'll get on my knees or whatever. That's what they're saying. But do you have any proposals?
I immediately responded to the president who quietly asked me. I want a divorce, alimony, and child support. And father-in-law, please, let your wife go. Also, I'm leaving home with Yuki and my mother-in-law. They were surprised that I had said this, but their faces gradually turned red with anger.
Don't play dumb with me. Stop getting ahead of yourself. You're just a woman. Who's gonna listen to you?
The two of them who were yelling at me in their usual tone turned pale when they noticed the president's cold stare.
I seen your sincerity with my own eyes, and our contract ends this month.
And then, finally, the president left, leaving the two of them stunned. I, along with my daughter, decided to leave the house. The divorce finalized with alimony and property division using evidence that I had gathered. Later, when my mother-in-law came home from the hospital, we discussed the future. Do you want to go back to that life? I asked her, and she said she would rather divorce my father-in-law and live with us. A short time after the three of us left home, I began to receive voicemails from my husband.
Would you mind taking out the trash? I haven't washed my laundry in days, and there's bugs in the house. Come back. I'll forgive you if you come back.
And to my surprise, my ex-husband hasn't changed at all. I am now happily living with the three of us in a cheap company dormitory under the president's company. And I heard that my husband's company, after being cut out of the contract, is now in financial trouble. They must be struggling with reduced income. And of course, I have no intention of going back to the house with them. At best, I hope they live with the hardships of women's work, which they look down upon.
I am Miyuki. I'm a university student who is living very frugally. I can't rent a place near my school because the rent is too expensive. So, I rented a room in an inconvenient and slightly far away area. It's a rural area, so a car is a must. And the landlord there is very kind and lent me one parking space for free, as I don't have any money.
Sure thing.
Then, one day, a strange car was parked blocking the parking lot. Oh, I wonder whose car that is. I can't get my car in there. It's really in the way. I had just moved here and had no one I could call a friend, so I had no idea who owned the car and was wondering what to do about it. Oh, what should I do? Then the landlord came.
Is that your friend's car? It's been parked there for a while, but it's public street, so could you have them move it?
I told him I didn't know who the owner was, and in response he said it would be trouble because I wouldn't be able to park. the landlord contacted someone he knew who handled tow trucks.
Please.
Furthermore, we didn't want to get in trouble later for not knowing who the owner of the car was, so he called the police as well. Ah, the police.
The owner might come to the house, so please contact us then.
He told us. We gave them the details and the car was immediately removed by a tow truck. I thought the owner might come for it that day, but no one showed up. And 2 days later when I forgot about it. I returned home after my part-time job as usual and saw a blonde woman in front of my house. None of my friends I knew in college had blonde hair, so I approached her, carefully, wondering who she was. The woman comes into view as she starts kicking my car. I rushed over and was even more surprised to see a kindergarten-aged boy next to her. Ah! Excuse me, that's my car. Could you please stop? You! I had my car parked right here. Where did it go? And with that line, I knew this blonde woman was the owner of that car. Yeah, about that. The police had your car towed away. What? I just left it parked there for a little while. What do you think you're doing? You've got to be kidding me. The woman got mad and started kicking my car again. In a rampage, the woman told me that she was staying at a friend's house nearby. Then why don't you ask them to let you park in front of their house? They said I couldn't park in front of the house, so I looked for a coin-operated parking lot, but there aren't any around here. That's why I parked here for a little while. Thief, I want my car back now! I decided to leave her alone and go back to my house since my car had scratches and dents all over it, and she didn't seem like she was going to calm down. Ugh. Ugh. Hey, where do you think you're going? I ran back inside the house and locked the door but heard her banging on it. I was terribly scared, so I called the police to handle the situation. And right outside the door, Mom! Bathroom! I heard the child's voice. I can't hold it! I have to go to the bathroom! Hey, my kid wants to go to the bathroom, so let me borrow it. There's no choice. You're gonna have to do it here. After hearing that, I reluctantly opened the door, thinking that it would be terrible if he did it in front of the door. As soon as I opened the door, the mom walked into the room and started looking around, ignoring her child who desperately needed to go to the bathroom. The child was pale in the face and flailing around, trying to hold his pee. Please take your child to the bathroom, over here. You take him. It's not my house. In defeat, I had no choice but to take him to the bathroom. And when I came back to my own room, to my surprise, the woman had opened the cabinets and had my bag and other things in her hand. Anyway, I'll take this bag as a compensation for having my car stolen. And this, and this, and... this too. The woman was holding a designer bag and other things that I got from my mom, and was about to take other things like cosmetics in the bag and take them away. This is horrible! What's wrong with this person? To be honest, I'm not really good at confronting people to begin with, and I was just overwhelmed by the sheer force of this woman. Please stop. Please. I can only say this in a weak tone. And just then, the doorbell rang, and then the police arrived. Whew-wee, thank God. You called the police? I'm telling you, you're the one who's gonna get arrested. You stole my car. Ignoring the woman who started yapping again, I let the police officer inside. And for whatever reason, the woman was sitting around lounging in my house with designer bags in her hand and her child by her side like she owns the place. The police officer didn't seem to understand what's going on, so I told him what had happened so far.
Parking a car without permission is illegal parking. Besides, what you're doing now constitutes theft.
What?
That's impossible. She took my car without my permission. It's not my fault. I want my car back. The more she talked and ranted, the more heated the situation became, and the police had to call for backup. And there it was. Several police cars surrounded the house, and the woman was taken away to the police station. After the storm passed, I was left with my car, which had been wrecked. But I thought that was the end of the matter, which was a big mistake. Ah, man. I decided to at least charge the woman for the repairs, so I contacted my high school seniors and asked them to help me out. Well, later that day, we set up a meeting with the woman's parents and their lawyer. I was informed that the woman's husband was currently behind bars for being involved in the car theft case, so it would be the woman, her parents, and the lawyer who would be attending. What? The woman's dad said he would join us later after picking up his lawyer, and it was the woman and her mother who came into the conference room. The mother said, "Don't report the damage, because if you do, my daughter will have to go to jail. It's not like you can't use the car, so just put up with the scratches."
Excuse me, ma'am, what your daughter did is a crime, and I heard she tried to take her belongings without permission. After going to such great lengths, you want the victim to just put up with it?
You're an outsider, aren't you? I'm talking to the other person, so please be quiet for a second.
No, I am not an outsider. Besides, your daughter's car was not scratched or wrecked, and yet she caused this problem out of spite. If that's the case, patient might not be the right word for it. But shouldn't you have educated your daughter who caused this problem to be more patient?
You've never been a parent before. How dare you talk like that? My daughter even has a child. Are you trying to take away the parent away from the child?
We are the victim and your side is the perpetrator. Can you please stop shifting the blame?
The conversation was one-sided with the woman's claims, and things didn't go anywhere.
I hoped to hear an apology, so I set up this meeting, but it seems like you have no intention of apologizing at all. So, I will be taking legal action against you from here on out.
You're overreacting just because my daughter parked the car. Try it if you can. The meeting lasted about 2 hours, but the lawyer and the father didn't show up until the end. The woman saw me with my senior and probably thought we wouldn't make a big deal out of it. Thankfully, the university I go to is an actually well-known law school, and my senior is a respectable lawyer who works in a firm. After that, I was able to get a good amount of money for the repairs, and compensation for the inconvenience and other various things. What?
The case was then settled by having them sign a restraining order as to not cause any further damages. But within the week, the woman and her parents came to see me. Of course, I didn't open the door and called the police as soon as possible, but I was horrified to hear them cursing me and kicking the door on the other side. After that, the three of them went behind bars and I was able to buy a new car with the settlement money. My senior advised that I should move out because the three of them might come back, and so I decided to move out. The fear of having the front door slammed was so traumatic that I decided to live in an auto-lock apartment, although the rent is more expensive, but thankfully I had the settlement money with me.
Nice place.
Thank you for watching all the way to the end. What did you think of today's episode? Leave a comment and let me know your thoughts on today's story. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe!